Welcome to Women Kicking Glass, the only radio show on OC Talk Radio dedicated to empowering women to be the best leaders they can be in any endeavor they choose. Pattie Grimm is our host and interviews top women in a variety of fields to help women grow, learn, and lean in together. Pattie has over 25 years of experience in primarily male-dominated fields in senior-level management positions. Pattie is the owner of Advantage Training Limited, an organizational leadership team training company. She recently released her new book for women called Quiet Women Never Changed History. Be strong, stand out, and stand up. With the subtitle, Let's Go Kick Some Glass.
All right, and that's exactly what we're going to do today here. I'm Paul Roberts. I'm the owner of OC Talk Radio. I'm happy to welcome Pattie Grimm to the station. Welcome, Pattie.
Thanks, Paul. I'm really excited to be here and to kick this off today. This is a great moment for women in Orange County and women around the world to really get together and kick some glass.
Well, for those of you listening to this show, first show later, let me just set it up here. Obviously, we're taping this one on November 8th. The election is taking place right now as we speak, and potentially, hopefully, probably, we'll find out tonight, we're going to have the first woman president in the history of America. That's a pretty auspicious moment here.
That's great. I mean, I talk about interesting timing. I actually was in the middle of writing the book when she was officially announced as the first female candidate to be a major party's nominee, and so that was something I put in the book. And now to be kicking this off today is almost too ironic.
It's real. It's surreal. We're starting a show about women kicking glass on the one day that the biggest glass ceiling of all may get kicked in here. So,
woohoo!
How amazing is that? And you know what's amazing to me is I'm in my 60s here, so I remember the 60s. And although they used to say if you can remember the 60s, you weren't there, but I do remember the 60s, and I remember the 70s thereafter, and the whole growth of the feminist movement. And my wife is an avowed feminist, although everybody hates that term, including her. But that idea that women could have the same opportunities as men seems so natural. Why are we still struggling with this so many years later here?
Well, it's interesting, and there's a recent fact that I think scares a lot of women, and in particular when I do my speeches and presentation, when I talk to young women, they say, well, I'm not always experiencing the same things you're describing, but here's some reality points. One, women's pay has only gone up 1% in the past decade. Wow. If we stay at this current pace where we are in getting to pay equality, we will not equal or get to pay equality for 179 years.
Oh, my goodness. We got to wait another 179 years.
Yeah, and we've gone through evolutions of the woman movement all the way back to Susan B. Anthony through the 60s with Gloria Steinem, now with Sheryl Sandberg and her groundbreaking work, Lean In. Mm-hmm. So we've really seen a number of evolutions.
The CEO of Facebook.
Yeah, we have to do something really, really different to really break through that glass ceiling, and my book is a lot about that and how to get from point A to point B and how to do that, and so it's really important to do that. Other interesting facts is that things like sexual harassment and date rape are up on college campuses.
Oh, don't tell me that. No.
There's interesting things like there's more women graduating from college, but yet we're losing more women out of the workplace in increasing numbers, so there's a whole bunch of things going on. So hopefully this election really makes a difference, but hopefully, too, there's a lot of great women out there that want to lean in together and really kick some glass going forward.
Well, that's the point of this show, is to kick some glass and break through here, and to empower women to not only remind people of the need to do this, because I think, don't you, sir, maybe this is a male perspective, but doesn't it seem like we fought that battle and it's over, and it seemed like everybody just sort of assumed we won. It's sort of like racism. When Obama got elected, we thought, well, we went through that in the 60s. We had the racial riots and the civil rights and all this stuff. Didn't we do that? But it seems like we didn't complete it. We didn't go all the way.
We really, you know, there was the old commercials, "You've come a long way, baby," which in itself is kind of interesting.
That's right, baby.
Baby. But in essence, we have come a long way, but just we have so much farther to go. Patricia Arquette at the Academy Awards stood up and gave a compelling speech about equal pay equal means equal.
Yeah,
she has an amazing website. Please go to Equal Means Equal and just watch the trailer. The numbers and the statistics about what's going on in the workplace of how far we haven't come are astounding.
And I guess that's the point of the story, how far we haven't come. Somehow as a child, as a young person, watching all the evolution of civil rights and women's rights and gay rights and all these other groups that fought so hard to be taken seriously, to have an equal opportunity. And after the bloody battles were fought, there was kind of a feeling, I think, in the country that we broke through. We did that. And yet we didn't completely do that. We didn't. There are still vestiges of all those issues still floating around. And here we are 50 years later, and in many ways refighting or relitigating these issues all over again. It's amazing to me.
Yeah. Come a long way. We've got a long way to go.
Yeah, exactly. It was a lot longer than we thought. Yeah. All right, so walk us through your career here. You've certainly broken through a lot of barriers. You've been in a primarily what I would think of as a male dominated field, working in technology here.
Yeah.
How, why, where? Walk us through your evolution.
I'll tell it in context a little bit of also about my story that I talk about in the book and when I do my presentations. So I started out sort of a middle-class family, middle-class child, middle child, growing up in mostly California. Mm-hmm. Stay-at-home mom. Dad worked at the same company for 45 years.
And
right?
my wife is a middle child, too, and she says the middle children are the ones that are always lost. The oldest, responsible, the youngest, the baby, the middle child. Who is that again?
Yeah. And so when I graduated from college, I graduated with a degree in education at Cal State Long Beach, and I went into education. I was going to be a teacher. Right. That was my vision. I wanted to change the world and teach kids how to be great kids.
Teachers and nurses. Those are the two avocations for women here. Right. And
I was teaching school at a school district up in North Torrance, got laid off because of Proposition 13, one of the laws that were passed years ago. Right. And I needed a job. So I went to my godfather, who was the senior vice president of Bank of America, and I got a job in banking.
Wow.
And I really thought I just got a job. I needed money. I was graduate. I had student loans to pay off. I needed to get a job. That's all I was thinking about. Right. I got into banking, and I fell in love with it. I loved the people. I loved what we were doing. I loved the work. And I really fell into it. So by the age of 28, I was a vice president in a major California bank.
Wow. By 28?
By 28.
Wow.
And so I would be one of these women that would attend all the meetings in downtown Los Angeles. I would be the one woman there in a red jacket or something kind of, all the white men
That's right.
in the gray and blue
suits. White men in gray suits, right.
Gray and blue suits, absolutely. And I remember one of the meetings, being in the meeting, and we'd been in this meeting for like 3 hours, and nobody had gone to the bathroom. So I started to get up and started to walk towards the door, and one of the elderly gray-haired men in the blue suit said to me, "Where are you going, young lady?" And I said, "I'm going to the bathroom." He says, "Well, we don't do those in these meetings. We don't want to lose momentum." And I looked at him and said, "You have two choices. I can go to the bathroom here, or I could go to the bathroom in the ladies' room and be back in 2 minutes.
Where would you like me to lose it?
Where would you like me to go?" And I went to the bathroom and came back in 2 minutes.
Wow.
And part of it was I think I grew up with a very caring, giving father and mother who taught me a lot of things. My mom and dad taught me tenacity. They raised me to believe I could do anything I put my mind to.
Yes.
My dad started teaching me tennis at the age of 7, and I played high school and college and competitive tennis for many years. So my best memories of my father are playing tennis. Now, one favorite memory of mine that I always tell in my seminars and in my workshops was I was about 8 years old, and in tennis you either play at the back of the court or at net.
Right.
And I was afraid to play net because I was afraid to get hit with the ball.
Sure.
Now, today this would be considered child abuse. So my dad tied a rope around my waist, tied the rope to the net, so I couldn't go any place past the mid-court where you're supposed to stand.
And then he whacked balls at you.
Had a bucket of balls and whacked balls at me, and I had tears running down my eyes. Now, like I said, today that would be child abuse. However, to me, that was an act of love. My best memories were playing tennis and competitions with my dad.
And that mirrors my wife's story because she's in her 60s as well, and her dad taught her to fix a car and to do other sorts of things like that. Because he said, "I don't want you to realize. I want you to be able to, you're not going to be helpless. You're going to be able to change a tire yourself and do all these kinds of things."
Yep.
And she always talked about that, how unusual she thought that was. Now, from her perspective, though, when she actually went to work at bank. She's been in banking for, 30, 40 years or something here. When she got into the workforce, she was surprised, though, how the world wasn't what her dad told it was, that you could do anything, you could be anything. Yeah. There were limits. There are still limits here. Yeah. Talk about that, because we continue to. I have a daughter. I've taught my daughter to be self-reliant and strong. I think that's a normal value that we instill into both boys and girls today here, and yet women go out And the world still has barriers, glass ceilings.
Right. Yeah, so from banking, I ran my own company for 12 years doing training and consulting for a lot of organizations, LA Times, Mattel Toys, a bunch of different companies.
Wow.
And then I got hired by Microsoft, which I never in my life thought I would get into banking, and I certainly would never thought I would be an IT person. To this day, my family comes over and says, "Can you fix my computer?" And I'm like, I was in sales and marketing. I was in customer relationships. I have no idea how to fix your computer because I can't fix my own.
Right.
And so I worked at Microsoft for 15 years, and I worked with some of the smartest, brightest, most amazing people in the world. And it was really a great, great career for the first, out of my 15 years, I would say I had about 14 years of a great career.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to slide. I started to also physically feel poor all the time. I was working literally 60, 70, 80 hours a week. Wow. I worked every night. I worked every weekend. My typical day was I would get up at 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I would check email. I would do a quick workout. I would go to the office. I'd work all day. I'd get home at 6 or 7. I would eat dinner, and I'd be back on the computer within a half an hour.
Right, because that's what that world requires. That's what that world demands and expects.
And I never thought I was good enough. So one of the reasons I wrote the book is because I went through the rise, the fall, the recovery, and then the recovery again. And so my book really kind of outlines that process of where I saw myself slipping. And I ended up at one point being on a 4-month medical leave because I went to see probably close to a dozen doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners, and said there's something wrong with me. I feel like I'm walking in molasses on a cold Montana night. Ooh. I was dark.
That's an image.
Wasn't happy. I mean, I felt like I put on the happy face every day. I was always the Energizer Bunny. I was always the one in the office that was there and making people happy, and yet I was completely miserable inside.
And is that because you're the one woman in the group, or one of the few women in the group, that somehow you have to prove yourself, work harder, outdo everybody here?
There's a number of barriers that just recently came out from some of the lean-in research, and one of them is that even once women get to a certain level in an organization, they still have to prove themselves over and over and over again. So once you get to manager, then senior manager, then director, at each level you have to prove yourself double hard over your male counterpart.
Because you're the pioneer, and we've thought, I don't know, can women really handle this stress and this commitment, and et cetera, all the myths that kept women from emerging into corporate ranks here that still do.
Yeah.
And so if you're the first of any group, then you have to, somehow you're the pioneer, and you got to prove all these are myths.
Right, and so the reason I wrote the book, which I'll say the title again because it's a little bit long, it's Quiet Women Never Change History. Be strong, stand up, stand out, with the subtitle of Let's Go Kick Some Glass.
Yeah, that's what motivated the show. When I heard that, I said that we got to make a show out of that, because that's a mantra right there. Let's go kick some glass.
Yeah, you have to be careful how you say it sometimes, especially maybe if you're at a networking event and you've had a glass of wine.
Let's go.
Be careful how it comes out. And so the book really, I spent 3 years after I left Microsoft doing research. I interviewed or had people respond to my survey. About 850-something people responded to my survey. I personally interviewed people in regards to what makes a great woman leader. Is there a difference between men and women leader?
That's what we all wonder, right?
If so, what? And then the specifics. What are the barriers women face? Are they more internal barriers, like lack of self-confidence and not feeling we're good enough and having to work harder? Or are they external barriers, like the good old boys club and sexual harassment and some of the policies that are out there?
Right.
Turns out that they're both internal and external. We can still fight the external ones, which we need to continue doing and do some things radically different to break through that 179 years to get to pay equality.
Right.
But there are a lot of internal barriers we can take care of ourselves. Our self-esteem, our self-confidence, our ability to do things. And
those messages that get programmed into you that this is, I read a book a long time ago, I wish I could remember the name of it, but it was kind of like Good Girls Don't. And the idea was that, you get into a competitive alpha male world, at least that's the way it's still set up, and if you start acting like the boys, there's a little voice in your head say, good girls don't do this, that's not polite, that's not nice, that's not caring, that's not something here.
That's interesting, because I just saw a TED Talk the other day, very powerful TED Talk about how we raise girls versus boys.
Yes.
And I had never thought about this, and I started to think about my own children, my own daughter, but also my sister's much younger than I am, and she's got a daughter, 15, who just started at J. Sarah. She's got a son about 10 or 12, and then a younger daughter that's 5. And I started to think about this, and one of the things that the person on the TED Talk said is, we still tend to raise girls to be perfectionists. We raise boys to be risk takers.
Yes.
We raise girls to be polite and not say anything unless you have something nice to say.
Right.
To keep your legs crossed. To always dress perfectly. They've got to have the perfect hair, the little ribbon in their hair. They've got to have the shoes that match.
Appearance is much more important than the appearance of a male.
And it's not as important to the boys. And so the
obviously, look at the way I'm dressed here today, right?
the net of the he's a bright orange
sweatshirt,
Caltrans sweatshirt with an I voted button on it.
Exactly, here in my famous cargo shorts that I wear all the time here from the 80s. Right?
And so it's just very interesting that we don't tend to raise boys that way. And her thing was, we need to raise girls to be risk takers. I was raised as a tomboy. I had to learn how to change the tire, change the spark plugs. I passed my driver's license on a truck that had 3 on the column.
Oh, wow.
That'll date me a little.
I can't do that, right.
And so I was always in trouble for climbing trees and tearing my dresses, and my mom would never let me wear white because I was a pigpen. I cut the hairs of every one of my Barbies. All those kinds of things.
Yeah,
so the book was really written to help women empower themselves, but also think about, how do we raise the right children? How do we raise our boys to think about girls in a different way?
Because we're telling girls they can do and be anything, but at the same time we may be programming them in such a way that they limit themselves.
You could. If we're programming them to be perfectionists and polite, I mean, don't be rude. Don't raise rude children, please.
Right.
Especially if they're in a restaurant close to me.
Right.
But in essence, raise your girls to be risk takers. It's okay to get dirty. It's okay to go do some different things. I was very, very proud of my granddaughter. My husband has coached high school football for a number of years. My son is coaching football. My granddaughter, at the age of 9, decided she wanted to play full contact tackle football, full gear, and was the only girl in the entire league. Yeah. And she wanted to get dirty, and I remember she
wanted to get knocked down, and
she was literally playing one time, and she was looking at inside of like a cage, like in a booth, and she was rattling the cage saying, "Let's go kick those boys." She was 9 years old.
Wow. Well, it's a different world, so maybe we're making some progress. All right, well, we're going to make some progress and pay some bills here, so we're going to come and take a commercial break. And then when I come back, I want to talk about what you discovered out of writing this book, how it changed you, and why all that led you to do this radio show. We'll be back and talk more with Pattie Grimm right after this. All right, we're back kicking some glass with Pattie Grimm, who is our newest show host here on OC Talk Radio. Let's just mention the show here quickly, and then we'll talk about your book. The show, Women Kicking Glass. I get the title right here?
You got it right.
Women Kicking Glass. It's going to be Fridays at 10 a.m. Give us some idea. Who are you going to talk to on this show here?
My goal is that this is a radio show by women, for women, and about women and the issues they care about. So
do I have to leave the studio while it's going on here or something?
No, I need somebody to run those things behind the scenes. Yeah, and I want to interview entrepreneurs who are running their own business so they can give you wisdom and advice about why they started their business, how they did, what worked, what didn't work.
And what they ran up against.
I'm going to interview, I've already got plans to interview a woman to help talk about planning your family's estate and how do you keep your money and make sure that doesn't get taken away from you as you go forward. I'm going to talk to a woman who runs a group that is focused on stopping human trafficking in Orange County, which is rampant.
Yeah, maybe the woman we've had on one of these shows here, and she is just got some, if it's the same person, just some startling statistics.
Yeah.
Human trafficking here in the 21st century. Just hard to believe.
People think it happens overseas in Thailand or Mexico or some other country. It is rampant in Orange County, and so just being aware of those issues. I'll interview the woman who owns Working Wardrobes and why she started Working Wardrobes and what she does to help women and also veterans in particular. Interviews with, I'll be talking about things in the book, like how do you give good feedback? How do you build a good team? Whether you own your own business with one other person or you own a company of 1,000 people, you need to know how to give feedback, how to be a leader, how do you stand up above everybody else and make sure that your message gets across.
And how do the generations work together? That's an issue we hear a lot today.
Yeah.
I'm of the baby boomer generation here. And we do things different than our children do, this so-called millennials here. They got to get motivated from the word go. We're just doing a show this morning on HR and how it's a different world out there. If they don't feel empowered or excited or enthralled with your mission statement here, they're making an exit for the door within weeks, months of taking on the job. There's no hanging in there and just sucking it up and doing it anymore here.
Yeah, so my next book I started is actually called Give Me a Slack. I'm a millennial, not a slacker. How to bridge the generation gaps between baby boomers, Gen Xers, and millennials. Yes. And so that's sort of the next book, and I'm going to start some research on it. Big
issue. We've done lots of topics. We've been privileged to be at some conferences about it. All right, so all the full spectrum of issues that women face in business today. We talked about your success and how you were able to, why were you able to break through these glass ceilings? What was it about your journey that got you to the top of the mountain here in technology and other fields that you wouldn't normally see a lot of women, probably still don't see a lot of women. How did you do it? Accidentally, purposely, passionately? What got you through the door here?
I would say probably a combination of those things. One, having a strong purpose. And I talk about it in my book, having a strong purpose and a strong vision about the kind of leader I wanted to be and being very, very clear about that. And making sure I looked for and identified opportunities that played to my strengths. So I could shine by having opportunities where I could play to my strength, where it fit my vision and values. Because if you find opportunities in your life that fit your vision, your values, and your strengths, you perform better, you get more recognition, you have more opportunities, and things just happen. I mean, some of it was accident, being in the right place at the right time, during some major reorganization where you happen to be the most visible person in the room. The other thing I talk about in the book is, kind of the three principles of the book is first you have to be strong. So there's a couple sections of the book. First, you've got to be strong. Know what your strengths are. What are your strengths, and how can you use your strengths to be a strong, stand-up, stand-out, valuable woman to the organization and to yourself? And how is strong different than tough? Sometimes we get those two mixed up together. I'm a tough guy. I'm a strong guy. And I found, as we'll talk about over the coming months as this show unfolds here, I had the privilege to know and work with the late, great Maureen Reagan, President Reagan's daughter, who was, by her own definition, a tough broad. She was physically big, she was imposing, she was very forceful, she was very bright, and as her father admitted to her once in private, you're the type of woman that scares the hell out of me. Yeah. And I think scared the hell out of a lot of people. She failed to win public office, even though I thought she was a brilliant candidate. That image, she didn't come across as strong, she came across as tough. Yeah. And women and both men hated that. They like it in a man, hate it in a woman. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a slight difference here, and I happen to be somebody who was a freak for words. So many times I look up where words came from in order to figure out what the base of it is. So when you're strong, strong doesn't mean you have to be standing on the table yelling, screaming, shouting at the top of your voice. Strong just means you're coming from a strong center. You're coming from strength and that you're doing things to help yourself and a cause. To me, being tough is that you're being tough against somebody else. Strength can draw strength. Toughness is pushing people away because you're being tough and you're pushing your way through. It's like the difference between being assertive and aggressive. Tough needs an obstacle, too. Right. And if you don't have an obstacle, you almost have to manufacture them. Some would say that's the Trump mentality here, that he's got to fight with everybody around him because that's what he's used to. He's used to fighting back. He's a counterpuncher. Right. And so if nobody's punching him, he's almost hoping somebody will punch him because that's the way he operates. Yeah. And then for me, it's the difference like between assertive and aggressive. When you look up those two words in the definition, assertive means to stand up for a point of view in order to come up with a better proposal, a better way of doing things. You're trying to be assertive. You're trying to come up with a solution. Aggressive, when you look up the words, it's all about combat. It's about standing up against something else. Like being strong is being strong within yourself. Tough is being tough and being pushing against somebody else. And where it comes from is your intent. So I've been called an aggressive person before. Not a word that started with a B, I hope. No. Right. I've been called a pushy broad. I've been called aggressive. And the difference to me is your intent. If your intent when you're being assertive is to state your point of view, be strong in your point of view, and yet listen to others' point of view to come up with the best solution that's best for the customer, that's best for you, and it's best for the employees and the management, that's being assertive. When you're being aggressive, you're doing those things at the expense of somebody else. It's a win-lose versus a win-win.
Yes. If your object is to crush somebody else, then that's aggressive.
That's aggressive, and that's tough.
Right.
So part of the be strong is also knowing your strengths. So I have an exercise in the book that walks people through how do you figure out what your strengths are. And then how do you play to your strengths. Because you can improve your weaknesses to get to an acceptable level, but if you spend all your energy improving your weaknesses, you'll only improve incrementally. If you focus on improving your strengths, you improve at quantum leaps.
That's interesting to me because we had an author on it. I can't remember the book again here. It's a symptom of my age here. I don't have Alzheimer's. I have sometimers here. I can't remember sometimes here. But we had somebody come on and they talked about everybody wants to work on your weaknesses. And they said, just accept your weaknesses. Find your strengths and magnify those rather than trying to get 2% better at something that you're just never going to get better at here.
Yeah,
that's kind of what you're saying.
Exactly. And when you're in your strength zone, you perform better. You feel better. Something makes you feel stronger. That's a strength. You find yourself doing it when nobody's watching. That's a strength. Weakness is something that physically drains you. It zaps your energy. It's not in your wheelhouse.
And you don't want to do it.
And you don't want to do it, so you delay it. It's not worth it. So the first one is be strong. The second one is be able to stand up. In order to stand up, you need to have something to stand on. You need to have a written, compelling, personal vision that's 12 words or less, or around 12 words. You could put on a business card. I walk people through an exercise of imagining that your favorite newspaper article or newspaper or magazine is going to write an article about you in 5 years. What do you want that article to say about you? Now go find your favorite place, take out a pad of paper, and just write down words. She was passionate. She was strong. She was talented. She was assertive. She was funny. She was compassionate. She developed people. Just write out every word you can think of in a nice place that you enjoy. Put it away for a little while, come back and refine it, and then get it down to 12 words, and I'll share mine in just a minute. It's
sort of the obituary exercise. Somebody called it a long time ago. Where what do you want people to remember you as? If somebody had a museum in your name, what would be in the museum?
I try and make it more positive. That's the obituary thing.
I'm an old guy.
So my personal vision that has guided my life, and when I've made career and life decisions in alignment with my vision, I've been happy, I performed better, I got promoted, I've had more business clients when I fit this vision, which my vision is to make a difference and empower people to reach their full potential. That's it. The times in my career and life when I took jobs because I thought, I need this job because it's got the right title and it didn't fit my strengths, I was miserable.
So you didn't just take a job because this one pays $10,000 more?
Not anymore. Not anymore. I took a client once where, when I had my consulting business, where I knew in my heart that no matter what I did to train their people to be good managers and good coaches, the environment they work in was toxic. It was a security company. I won't make the name of it, but it was a very big security company run by guys who used to work in the CIA, the FBI, and military intelligence.
So it had sort of a negative culture to begin with here.
And that no matter what I did, I was going to train people to be better managers. They're going to go back to a work environment that was horrible.
Yeah.
And so I don't do that anymore.
We had somebody on a show a while ago, and they were talking about training people. And they said sometimes you got to be brutally honest. That's not easy to do if you're a consultant. And so this particular person went into a company and said, they were supposed to be doing HR training or something, and I said, "Well, tell me about your company culture." And the CEO says, "We're open, we're warm, we're loving, we're people and everything." So, well, let me follow you around for a day. I just want to see what happens. Nobody ever came up and talked to this CEO. They would look and run the other direction. In meetings, he would cut people off and immediately start imposing everything. So he lists all these things over and over again. And finally, at the end of the day, said, "You know what? If I'm going to take this job, I got to be honest with you. Do you really think that, you said it's all about this open stuff?" He said, "I don't see anybody doing this." And he says, "Well, it sounds good, doesn't it?" And, again, there's walking the walk here. Do people really we're so consumed with trying to say the right thing, to be politically correct, as they like to say today here, And yet, I don't know, apparently things really haven't changed.
Yeah. Here's the difference. I was invited to do a large contract. It was probably over $250,000, one of the largest ones my company ever would have had. Mm-hmm. And it was for a large utility agency in Los Angeles. And I went up and made the final cut of the RFP proposal.
Right.
I was there with 3 other consultants. We were the top 3 that were going to be considered. And I presented our plan to train all of their managers to be better managers, and it was going to take this much and blah, blah. And I kept asking the people in the room, it was men and women this time, what will you do to change so that when these managers are trained, they have the right tools and resources and a culture in which they can flourish.
Right.
They couldn't answer the questions. I asked the question 5 ways to 5 different people. Never got an answer. After about 10 minutes, I looked at them all. I said, I would like to thank you very much for the opportunity to respond to this request for proposal. I am not your consultant.
Wow.
I will give you the name of 5 other people who will be happy to take your money, but it's not me. And I walked out the door, and they called me back, and they said, I can't believe you did that. Were you really serious? And I said, absolutely. It was against my vision and values.
Wow.
So,
and I applaud you for that, because I hear this stuff all the time. And even I'm sort of the old cynical guy. I start to listen to these people and say, really? You telling me that when times get tough, when your investors are climbing down your back, when your boss is screaming, it's, we got to make this goal and we got to do this or you're out. So many companies, all that just flies right out the window.
Yeah. So the third point is to stand out.
Yes.
And this is what's really important. This is where all 3 really important, and then I've got 2 other tips for women in terms of how to be strong women leaders and empower yourself.
Okay.
It's a lot about self-empowerment. The final one on stand out is that in order to stand out, you asked me how I stood out.
Right.
In order to stand out, you need to be vocal, you need to be visible, and you need to be valuable. So in order to be vocal, that means you need to understand and have a good understanding of what you're doing and your knowledge so that you can be vocal. If your company has a big meeting and there's a big conference room table in the middle and a bunch of seats around the outside, arrive 5 minutes early and take a seat at the table. Research shows that people at the table get listened to more than the people sitting at the side. If somebody asks you to leave and say, well, that's only for certain people, that's only for the clients, simply apologize. I believe it's easier to ask forgiveness and permission.
Always.
Another one of my successes. So be vocal. Before a meeting, understand the topic a little bit. Raise your hand and ask questions. Ask the last question. Okay? Second one is...
so many people are afraid to do that because then they think they'll look dumb.
Yeah.
So I'll pretend I know even though what are we talking about here? I don't even know.
Yeah. Think of it ahead of time. Come up with at least a couple compelling questions and stand up. Be visible. That means be visible in meetings. Be visible in helping other people out in the team. Tell your manager when you do things well. I always kept a gratitude folder on myself, and I kept a folder on every one of my employees. And so when I did something well and I got an email or something from Bill Gates or Steve Ballmer or somebody saying you did a great job at that event, I would put that in my gratitude file. I would keep that. And when it came time for my performance appraisal, I had all this data from the whole year of all the stuff I had done.
Yeah, you can't just assume people will notice and see all this stuff. You have to, without being obnoxious about it, but you have to promote yourself. Yeah,
and then to be valuable is develop self-knowledge. Develop something you're really, based on your strengths, based on your vision, develop something you're really good at and be valuable and contribute to the organization and really try and make a difference. So that was number 3. Number 4 is probably the one that's hardest for women, and that is put yourself number 1 on your things to-do list. This is not selfish. This is not being a bad mom, parent, sister, brother, worker, whatever. This is, you have to put yourself number 1 on your things to-do list. You cannot give away what you do not own. So you cannot give compassion, self-esteem, self-confidence to your children or to people in your life if you don't have that yourself. And so that's that internal barrier of developing that confidence and get good and take time to invest in yourself. Read a book. Go attend a free seminar. Go to a community college. Better yourself in some way. Take time for yourself. My new morning routine is I still get up at 4:30, or I probably get up at 5:30 in the morning when my pug sits on my chest and says, "It's time to get up, Mom."
Yeah, right.
I get up. I do my yoga and prayers outside. I read something inspirational. I read the newspaper. I take the dog for a walk. I might turn on TV, and then I do my work. Right? I also take breaks throughout the day for me.
Well, we're going to take one last break in a couple of minutes here. We're down to our last 5 minutes here. I just got to reiterate that line. Say it again. You can't give away what you don't own yourself.
You cannot give away what you do not own. I
love that. Did you make that up, or did you? That's clever. I like that. That really does powerfully put it forth. All right, any other quick ones? Because then I want to ask you just quickly about where to get the book and all those kind of things.
The last one is pay it forward. We need to pay it forward to our children, to the other women. We need to stop this myth that women compete with one another. Sheryl Sandberg's latest thing is lean in together. Madeleine Albright has a great quote. There should be a special place in hell for any woman who does not help another woman succeed. So we need to pay it forward to each other and to our children, especially our girls.
So let's talk about that for just 1 second, because I don't know if that's a myth or if that's a persistent reality here. But my wife says women do not support each other. Well, there's only room at the table for one woman, and I'm going to be that woman, she says. So, too many women say. And so they will step on each other harder than they'll step on the men because they think that there's a scarcity of positions for them there. Or they think they got to be tougher than the guys, which means, again, tough and arrogant and be even more mean-spirited or something there. And yet there's so many organizations and so many groups trying to empower women and trying to help women organize together. And the last example I'd give is this election here. Again, we don't know how this is going to turn out tonight. But if Hillary Clinton wins, it won't be with the overwhelming support of women in the same way that Barack Obama won overwhelming support of African Americans, or John Kennedy when I was a kid. We are all Irish Catholic. We had to vote for him because we wanted to see the first Catholic president. So many young women today are like, I don't know, that's not my motivating factor to see a woman succeed.
It was interesting. I heard a very senior woman at a conference last week say that the time to do your mentoring and to get your mentorship, or you get mentoring and be able to develop as a woman, is before you turn 30. Because after 30, it is more competitive. I think we just need to dispel that myth and realize that if you help somebody else, they'll come back and help you. And I've got so many examples of other women authors or other women trainers I've worked with recently that we're all helping each other. It's like, I'll connect you with this person if you connect me with that person. We're not competing with each other. I was at an event. I could have promoted my book. I chose not to because it was more about her. So we have to change that myth. We have to raise our girls to help each other out and pay it forward, pay it forward, pay it forward.
So what did you learn from this experience of writing this book? You have been a successful corporate executive, companies like Microsoft. You've been a trainer. You've been an author. You've been all these things. But you wrote this book. Why? Why did you get into it, and what did you learn out of it?
I really wrote the book because I truly am at my very heart and soul, probably down to my toenails, really do want to live my vision, which is to make a difference and empower women to be the best they can be in any career or endeavor they choose. That is my motivating factor. In fact, at one point, I wrote the book. I had all these Post-it notes all over my house about thoughts and things I had for the book. We moved. I put them all away, and I thought, you know what, why would I write a book? Who in the heck would buy my book?
Yes,
they wouldn't listen to me. What if they don't like it? And finally,
that self-doubt that starts in on all these things.
Well, and it's funny because on Easter Sunday, sitting in church with my sister and her family, I got hit by something. That day, I went home and started writing. This was Easter Sunday of this year. I finished on July 4th.
Oh, wow.
I actually finished writing the whole book end to end in about 2.5 months. And now I'm just motivated to promote it, to speak to women's groups, to do webinars, to do conference presentations,
to do a radio show,
to go out and spread the message. And the book is very practical because there are exercises in there. There's an exercise, and many times we're faced with making career choices like maybe deciding to go have a child or take care of an elderly parent or choosing between this job and another job. And I tell people, think of it like let's make a deal. You've got choice number 1, 2, and 3. You've got door number 1, door number 2, door number 3. Think about your vision, your values, your strengths. Do the pros and cons of each one of those 3 jobs. Now pick one. The second step most people miss is pick your communication strategy. How will you tell your boss, your family, your friends? How will you tell your coworkers? They say, why in the world would you take that job? So the book is very practical with exercises all throughout.
I was watching a documentary on Frontline the other night about Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, and they were investigating their early lives, trying what we can learn from this. And Hillary at one point was quite a rising star in her own right, She had come to Washington as an attorney at Yale. She got appointed to the Watergate Investigation Committee and was making a lot of waves and a lot of noise. And suddenly she decides to go to Arkansas and follow her boyfriend back home here. And all her friends went, "Have you lost your mind?"
Yeah.
And she really couldn't really convince them or convey to them why she thought this was a smart move. The right move for her. Yeah.
My dad, as wonderful as he was in raising me to be a strong, independent thinker, when I told him I was leaving the bank to go start my own consulting company, his response was, "Why would you leave a secure organization where you're already a vice president and you've got the whole world in front of you?
Right.
Why would you leave this company to go start your own business?"
Right.
As a woman?
Well, that's the World War II generation kind of thing,
he totally supported me once I'd made that decision, but he was like, it just was out, just like the conflict between the millennials and the baby boomers right now.
Right.
We're just simply raised differently. We have different needs. We grew up in a different environment. I'll talk about that on one of the shows in the future. We just came from different places.
Yeah.
So, just helping women get through all of that. How do you give feedback to somebody? How do you fire someone?
Yeah.
How do you build a great team around you? If your strength is not data and details, you need to find somebody on your team who's data and detail focused.
Mm-hmm. And I love that idea, though, again, of how do you tell your story? How do you communicate my decisions? Too many times, men and women, we make a decision and then we're reluctant, afraid to tell our friends, our family, ourselves, our boss what we're going to do because we're immediately afraid of criticism.
What will they think?
What will they think? Yeah.
It almost stopped me from writing the book. What would people say when I told them I wrote a book?
Well, what will people think if they don't listen to this show? All the good stuff they're going to miss here. How do they find the book? When does it come out? And then we'll talk about the show one last time here. When does the book come out, and where do they get it?
The book is on Amazon. It's available in both paperback and Kindle version. You can simply search "Quiet Women Never Change History." The short title will come up, or you can enter the full title, "Quiet Women Never Change History, Be Strong, Stand Up, Stand Out, Let's Go Kick Some Glass." The book will come up.
Everybody's going to remember that part.
I know.
That's what they're going to say.
I may have to shorten it down a little bit in the future and just be "Quiet Women, Let's Go Kick Some Glass."
Yes, right.
And you can buy it on Amazon now. It's available. If you buy the book, please write a review. It's very important for Amazon, not just to drive sales, but also for reviews to get to bestseller ranking.
It really is. And just to be found in the sea of books. They'll take books that have reviews, good or bad, but if people are writing about and talking about them, they'll give that book more exposure when people search for titles. Yeah.
Also, people can contact me at my email, which is Pattie Grimm at live.com, and that's Pattiegrimm at live.com.
2 M's in Grimm here.
2 M's in Grimm and an IE on Pattie.
Okay.
Or they can call me at 425-289-6619, since I still have my Seattle phone number.
There you go. Or they can tune into Women Kicking Glass every Friday right here in Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio. That's going to be 10 a.m. Fridays live. Look forward to the list of people you're going to bring in. I'm going to feel like a fly on the wall. I'll be the guy listening to women here talk about what it takes to succeed in the world here. And that's something I think we all want to know because, I have a daughter. I don't want her to grow up with any limitations on her here. I think every parent feels that way. And I think we're still surprised, us men, us old guys, that more hasn't been made. We thought we fought the battle and we won, and apparently there's a lot more work left to be done. So thank you so much for coming in, and we look forward to hearing your show each and every week. Pattie Grimm, thanks. Welcome to OC Talk Radio.
Thanks, Paul. Glad to be here.
All right.
Thanks for listening to Women Kicking Glass, the only radio show on OC Talk Radio dedicated to empowering women to be the best they can be. Listen each week or download the podcast at pattie.grimm.podbean.com. To reach out to Pattie to schedule a speech webinar or to learn more about her leadership and team training, contact Pattie at pattiegrimm@live.com for more information about her company and her books. Have a kicking day.